My name is Elena Vargas. I was 35 years old when I walked into a conference room in Evergreen Springs, Colorado to decide whether my family's resort would receive a $90 million lifeline or collapse beneath the debt they had hidden for years. My father looked up, laughed once, and asked whether the real investor had sent me to take notes. My mother stared at the table. My younger sister whispered that I had no right to be there. None of them knew whose signature the lawyers were waiting for. 12 years earlier, my father had dragged my glamping proposal from my hands and ripped it down the middle in front of the entire family. I had designed a low-impact lodge that could operate beyond ski season, protect the watershed, and keep local workers employed year-round. He called it a hippie campground instead of Vargas. Daughter belonged behind the front desk, smiling for guests, not making decisions about land or money. Then he threw five $20 bills onto the floor. "Take it," he said. "Before the snow melts again, you'll be on your knees outside this resort begging me to let you back in." My mother said nothing. My sister watched. I picked up the bills, packed one suitcase, and bought a bus ticket to Portland. After the fare and one meal I had for two who left. I did not turn around. But as the bus pulled away, I made myself one promise. If I ever came back, I would not ask to be valued. I would be the person deciding what their pride was worth. Have you ever had your own father throw money at your feet and tell you it was the full measure of your value? Before I tell you what happened after I walked out, and why that $100 insult came back to decide everything, tell me, what time is it, where you are, and where are you watching from? I want to see how far this story travels. Tonight, Portland did not welcome me with opportunity. It charged me for every hour I remained there. My first room was half of a converted basement behind a laundromat shared with a nursing student who worked nights. My rent was $560 a month. I banked $40, kept $7 in my planks, shoe, and lived on oatmeal, bananas, and employee coffee. I opened a cafe from 5 until 8, drafted permit drawings from 9 until 6, and covered a motel desk on weekends. None of it included health insurance. When I sliced my palm on a broken carafe, I closed it with pharmacy strips because an all-emergency room bill could have ended me. Every spare hour went into learning zoning, water rights, hotel operations, construction lending, wildfire coverage, and the brutal mathematics of occupancy. Beautiful cabins did not create a viable resort. Cash flow did. 18 months after I arrived, I had saved $9,400 and registered Green Peak Lodging as a one-woman design and operations company. My first serious client owned an orchard outside Hood River. He hired me to convert 12 unused acres into a small retreat with canvas cabins, composting, systems, and a farm-to-table pavilion. I spent nearly every dollar on surveys, permits, engineering deposits, and contractor retainers. 3 weeks before construction, the owner terminated the project. His nephew had convinced him luxury townhomes would make more money. The contract reimbursed permits, but not the commitments I had made in my own name. I owed $31,700 to people who had trusted me. My landlord had already raised the rent. The drafting firm had cut my hours. For the first time since leaving Colorado, I considered calling home. I even typed the resort's number from memory. Then I pictured my father opening the front door before the snow melted. Not because he missed me, but because he had predicted my failure. I deleted the number. I sold my laptop, canceled my room, and slept in my used Subaru for 3 weeks, borrowing library, computers by day, and parking beneath a grocery store light at night. I did not disappear from my debts. I met every contractor, showed them my books, and asked for 90 days. A carpenter named Ben Alvarez studied my repayment plan and said, "People who intend to cheat don't usually bring spreadsheets." He gave me time. The replacement project was a flood-damaged county campground. I proposed a management lease. Green Peak would restore 5 sites, share lodging, revenue, and return the improved property after 10 years. A credit union lent me $68,000 against the equipment, every cent personally guaranteed. I pre-sold 70 founding weekends, then spent 4 months staining decks, checking drainage, cleaning bathrooms, and answering reservations from my car. We opened with 5 cabins, 2 employees, and a handwritten sign. Rain flooded the Brain Zero path on our second weekend, producing a 1-star review and a wave of cancellations. I refunded the guest, rebuilt the path with Ben, and invited the family back. Their second review described our response and brought more bookings than any advertisement I could afford. After debt payments, payroll, insurance, and taxes, the first site earned $18,600. I used almost all of it to repay the people from the orchard failure. It took 4 years to open a second property, a neglected fishing lodge leased from a retiring couple in exchange for revenue. I was 27, still covering desk shifts and checking every invoice. Survival was not one dramatic leap. It was hundreds of unglamorous promises kept. The night I made the last repayment, Ben handed me the canceled promissory note. I cried in the supply closet because I finally understood how close I had come to becoming exactly what my father called me. Failure had not been sleeping in a car or losing a contract. Failure would have, I've been using shame as an excuse to abandon people who trusted me. That distinction became the rule behind every deal I made afterward. My family did not call during those years. My father, Rafael Vargas, told relatives I had chosen poverty to embarrass him. My mother, Celeste, mailed a Christmas card to an address where I had not lived for 2 years. My sister, Sophia, posted photographs from the resort under captions about protecting the Vargas legacy. I never responded. I was too busy building a future that did not require their permission. Green Peak grew slowly enough to be believable and fast enough to frighten people who had ignored it. I refinanced the second lodge, brought Ben in as construction director, and leased a third property near Mount Rainier. Instead of buying expensive land, immediately we used long-term operating leases and negotiated purchase options only after a site proved itself. Year-round experiences protected us when one warm winter devastated traditional ski resorts. In my 6th year away, a regional insurance company reviewed 3 years of audited results and committed $12 million to a joint venture. It was my first institutional money. It arrived after 6 years of payroll, records, inspections, guest data, and loan payments, not because an angel saw genius in a sketch. We acquired 2 distressed properties, while I kept operational control and refused to promise impossible returns. By year 8, Green Peak operated 6 lodges. I formed Summit Horizon Capital to invest in overlooked hospitality assets with strong conservation value. Fund 1 raised $65 million from the process. Insurance partner, 2 pension advisors, and several family offices. Fund 2 followed only after the first assets met their targets. 12 years after I had left home, Green Peak operated 9 resorts with 614 cabins and rooms across Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana. Summit Horizon managed $310 million, not my personal fortune, but capital entrusted to an investment committee. I chaired underwritten rules. We were large enough to consider a $90 million transaction, yet small enough that a reckless deal could still damage everything I had built. Headlines like, "To call me a woman who had turned $47 into $310 million, but I did not own every dollar. Teachers' pensions, insurance reserves, and private investors own most of it." My authority came with audits, conflict, disclosures, and a committee that could overrule me. I could bring Cascade Ridge to the table. I could not turn the fund into my private weapon. To face my family, I first had to prove the deal to people who had never met them. I did not hire detectives or celebrate bad reviews. I read public filings, lien notices, and industry reports because Cascade Ridge operated in a market I understood. The records showed my father had borrowed due heavily for luxury chalets as wildfire. Insurance tripled. He postponed wastewater upgrades, counted refundable deposits as operating cash, and paid vendors late. My mother remained the faction resort's public face. Sophia became chief operating officer and signed projections based on occupancy the property had never achieved. Then they announced the Grand Summit project, a $90 million refinancing and expansion that promised an eco-luxury village with 4-season cabins, protected trails, and a local food pavilion. I stared at the announcement for a long time. It was the same strategic idea my father had torn in half when I was 23, polished by consultants and presented as his vision. The project needed one investor to refinance old loans, fund construction, and prevent a forced sale. Summit's team valued the land but rejected the proposed structure. What my family did not know was that our funds had spent 3 years buying Cascade Ridge's troubled debt. Separate affiliates acquired its discounted senior note, mezzanine loan, equipment liens, and several vendor claims. Each purchase passed legal review and independent valuation. Together, they gave Summit control over roughly $35 million in secured and priority claims. I told my committee the borrowers were my family, recused myself from pricing, and required independent approval. Revenge might explain why I noticed the opportunity, but it could not be the investment thesis. The numbers stood without my anger, responsibly managed, and preserved rather than overbuilt. The property could support a smaller, profitable lodge and a conservation corridor. Injecting $90 million into my father's plan would finance denial. I later signed the purchase of 37 forested acres beside Cascade Ridge, controlling its only practical trail connection to protected state land. I remembered my father ripping my design across that trail line. Now I was acquiring land his expansion could not function without. I did not smile. Power felt quieter than I had imagined. My father's advisors approached Summit through a broker and accepted confidentiality until the final presentation. My family assumed the chairwoman was an heiress or pension executive. They rehearsed a pitch about heritage and the Vargas name without asking who owned their debt or the neighboring land. Desperation made them blind. 2 days before the meeting, our lawyers uncovered the final twist. Buried in the proposal's appendix were scanned concept drawings labeled Vargas, 4-season master plan. One page still carried the pressure, marks of my handwriting. Another had a torn lower corner that matched a piece I had kept inside an old notebook for 12 years. My father had not destroyed my idea. He had kept it, waited until the market proved me right, and claimed it as family intellectual property. I could have canceled the meeting. Instead, I asked counsel to leave every page exactly where it was. My family had requested $90 million from a stranger to build the future they had thrown out. With me, they deserved to explain that choice while looking at my face. The final presentation took place in Cascade Ridge's conference room. My family sat opposite Summit's legal team. I waited until the opening slides had begun, then entered, carrying one folder. and took the empty chair beside our lead attorney. My father stopped speaking. Recognition stripped his face. Then, habit rescued him. Snorch is greater than, is greater than. He laughed and said, "You did not tell. Me, Elena, was the fund sustainability consultant." My mother gave me an embarrassed smile. Sophia asked, "Are we seriously doing family theater during a $90 million meeting?" I placed my folder down. My father continued to a slide, projecting 91% occupancy, a number no comparable resort had sustained. He emphasized the Vargas legacy and the ecological design he claimed to have developed. His eyes kept returning to me, irritated that I had not lowered mine. Our attorney, Lydia Grant, finally raised one hand. "Before we continue, the fund needs the record to be clear." She turned toward my family. "Mr. and Mrs. Vargas, Miss Sophia Vargas, meet Elena Vargas, founder of Green Peak Lodging and chairwoman of Summit Horizon Capital. She chairs the investment committee, considering your proposal." Silence. Moved across the table, one face at a time. My mother gripped her pen. My father stared at Lydia, then at me, as if the facts might refuse to connect. "That's impossible," he said. "Elena runs campgrounds. 9 operating resorts," Lydia replied, "and approximately $310 million in assets under management." My father's color changed, but he straightened his tie and found the warm voice he had never used when I needed it. "Then this is good news. Misunderstandings happen in families." He smiled at the others. "Family forgives family." I watched him calculate shock, embarrassment, then the belief that blood still gave him leverage. My mother looked ashamed, but relieved that the investor might be someone she could guilt. Sophia glanced between the biography on her tablet and the woman she remembered, leaving with one suitcase. They were not seeing me yet. They were searching for the version of me they still knew how to control. I opened the folder containing the credit analysis, environmental report, and stolen drawings. For 12 years I had imagined victory roaring. The real moment was cold enough paper slide beneath my fingers. When the man who once called you worthless has to smile across a table because he needs your signature, do you feel victorious? Or do you finally understand how empty his approval always was? Proposal denied, I said. I said it in the middle of the meeting, so no one could mistake. Courtesy for uncertainty. Their budget omitted $11 million in water and wastewater work. Their model treated holiday occupancy as a year-round average. Wildfire coverage was under, quoted, $28 million of debt matured within 14 months, while vendors waited beyond 90 days. The project could not survive a moderate delay. "This is personal," Sophia said. "You came here to punish us." "If it were only personal, I would not have brought audited numbers," I replied. "The fund is denying an unsafe investment. A fact that you are the applicants does not make the risk disappear." My father struck the table with the same sound that once made me flinch. "You walk in after 12 years and judge what we built?" I turned to the appendix and placed the scanned drawings beside the torn fragment from my notebook. The edges aligned. "No," I said. "I am judging what you stole." My mother closed her eyes. My father denied, recognizing the drawings, then claimed anything created under his roof belonged to the resort, then said the market had not been ready. He had called my plan foolish when it came from a powerless daughter. Once consultants proved it profitable, it became his legacy. "You should be grateful," he said. "We preserved the concept. You preserved the paper." I replied. "I built the proof." My mother reached toward me. "This resort is our home. We can give you equity. We can put your name on the project, not an apology, an offer to purchase." My silence was something they were about to lose. I closed the folder. You still think I came back because I wanted my name on your sign? My father leaned toward me. Deny this, and you hurt hundreds of people to settle a childhood score. The employees are the reason Summit will not finance your expansion, I said. You are asking them to stand beneath another $90 million of risk, while you protect family equity. I will not do it. I offered one alternative, an orderly restructuring, independent management, and a smaller conservation plan. My parents would surrender control and most of their equity, but the resort could remain open. My father rejected it before Lydia finished. He would rather gamble the property than remove his name from the passen door. That refusal mattered later when he told the town I had never given them a choice. Lydia distributed notices identifying Summit's affiliates as holders of the senior note, mezzanine, loan, and equipment claims. We were not manufacturing a default, but we would not extend maturities, waive covenants, or provide rescue capital. The resort would meet every obligation as written. My mother's pen fell. Sophia whispered, "You own our debt? The funds I manage own it," I corrected. And unlike this family, I honor what has been entrusted to me. I stood. My father tried one final command. Sit down, Elena. I am still your father. I looked at the man who had once predicted I would return on my knees. That is a biological fact, not a business argument. Then I walked out, leaving the $90 million rendering glowing uselessly on the wall behind them. Nothing collapsed. In 72 hours, real consequences arrived, as polite emails, missed calls, then letters no amount of pride can soften. During the first week, the construction company withdrew its price. Two equity partners suspended negotiations after learning Summit would not extend the plies. Notes. My father blamed a vindictive family member and described Cascade Ridge as a healthy business targeted by predatory coastal capital. He did not mention the unpaid bills. I released no response. Summit gave the 40 resort 10 business days to cure a missed payment and restore reserves. My father emptied an operating account and delayed payroll taxes, creating two problems without solving the first. In week 2, Sophia called from an unknown number. Our father wanted her to sign an NDI.OBR Grader occupancy report showing unpaid reservations as confirmed. I told her not to sign and gave her independent counsel's number. She accused me of setting a trap. I did not create the numbers, I said. I am simply no protecting you from them. She hung up. The next morning, she refused to sign the report. My father removed her from finance meetings and told managers she had suffered a breakdown. By week 3, the resort missed its cure deadline. A judge reviewed the defaults, unpaid taxes, vendor claims, and misuse of guest deposits, then appointed a neutral receiver. Payroll, snorts, and essential services came first. Family distribution stopped. My father could no longer treat the resort's account as his own. His country club dues were rejected. His company card stopped working, and his office required the receiver's permission after hours. He searched for a white knight. A developer's plan failed because Summit's adjacent parcel controlled trail and utility access. Another lender demanded a destructive rate. Wealthy former guests listened politely, read the balance sheet, and declined. Then the town learned about the drawings. I did not leak them. At a public county hearing, my father claimed the expansion represented his lifelong environmental vision. Sophia stood from the second row and told the commissioners that the original concept belonged to me, that he had ordered staff to remove my initials, and that he had pressured her to sign false projections. She submitted copies to the record, resigned as chief operating officer, and walked past him without waiting for a response. The public humiliation hurt more than default. Townspeople remembered the plumber owed $46,000, the linen company carrying 8 months of invoices, and workers with delayed retirement contribution. My father's reputation rested on rescuing everyone. Once they saw his generosity had been financed with their money, respect vanished. At month's end, the receiver recommended a court-supervised sale. Summit would keep the lodge open, pay wages, honor reservations, and fund urgent repairs. My father offered the family house, pledged years earlier without telling my mother. Its value covered less than half the shortfall. My mother called me at midnight. She did not ask how I was. She asked whether I could release the house from the guarantee. It belonged to your grandparents, she said. Some things should remain in the family. Was I one of those things? I asked. She cried, but she did not answer. In the 7th week, the house, too, was listed. My mother moved into a 2-bedroom rental in Denver. My father stayed at the resort until the Ravens receiver had security. Remove him from a closed construction area. He had been trying to persuade a subcontractor to begin work without authorization so he could claim the expansion had already started. His public campaign collapsed at a packed employee meeting. He arrived without permission and claimed I planned to fire everyone. The receiver, read, Summit's written job, protections allowed. Then 3 vendors described his broken promises. No one shouted. They simply stopped believing him. Security escorted him past workers who once rose when he entered. That quiet loss of authority wounded him more deeply than any headline. The auction occurred in month 2. Against 2 hotel groups, Summit won with a $38.4 million credit bid based on independent value. Snorch is greater than. The family's equity vanished. Proceeds covered taxes, secured claims, and part of the vendor debt. Summit added a stabilization fund to pay employees and small suppliers in full. Snorch is greater than. My investors received a defensible asset. The town kept its jobs, and my father lost control. When the sale closed, employees watched him carry photographs and ceremonial keys from his office. Then the sign, Vargas Family Resort since 1978, was lowered. He stood beneath it as the bolts came. Free, looking small without making anyone else smaller. He turned toward me, because I had come for the transition meeting, and said, "You finally got what you wanted." I looked at the unpaid vendor ledger in my hands. "No, I got what you owed." Losing Cascade Ridge removed the stage on which my father performed importance. He had no office, staff, charitable budget, or reason for influential people to return his calls. The Chamber of Commerce accepted his resignation before he offered it. The Winter Festival replaced him. Men who once waited for his opinion now nodded and continued talking. In Evergreen Springs, every silence carried memory. My parents separated within 3 months. My mother remained in Denver and took her first paid job in 31 years. My father rented a furnished studio above an auto parts shop. After liens and guarantees, the house sale left no hidden fortune. He kept one truck, a protected retirement account, and his photographs. The man who valued everyone by possessions had to introduce himself without property attached to his name. Sophia corrected the resort's records, cooperated with the receiver, and refused to lie again. My father called her a traitor. She changed her number. 6 months later, she applied for an NEO, entry-level Green Peak procurement job. I recused myself, and an independent panel hired her on probation, barred from related party contracts. Her cooperation did not erase her part. She had enjoyed the title, signed careless forecasts, and stayed silent while vendors waited. The receiver required sworn testimony, and Green Peak required ethics and accounting training before she touched a purchase order. She accepted both without asking me to make them easier. That was the first change I trusted, not tears or promises, but discomfort endured without demanding rescue. When she received the offer, she came to my Portland office and asked whether it meant I forgave her. "It means you are qualified for a junior job," I said. "Forgiveness is not a signing bonus." She started the following Monday, reporting to people who did not care about her name. She made mistakes, admitted them, and learned. We were two adults testing whether truth could support what blood had failed to hold. My mother sent a 4-page letter describing my father's temper and all, the times she wanted to defend me, but stayed silent. She ended, "You will always be a Vargas daughter." I returned one sentence. "I stopped belonging to your version of this family the day you watched him throw $100 at my feet." I sent no money and scheduled no reunion. We canceled the expansion, restored the watershed, reduced the cabins, and placed most neighboring forest into a permanent conservation easement. The old family house became classrooms and dormitories for wildfire crews, ecology students, and hospitality apprentices. The new sign read, "Pine Glass, Conservation Lodge." Nothing carried the fauna day. Pride, Vargas name. My father appeared before the education center opened, thinner than I remembered and making no demand. He asked why I had erased the family name. "Because the people who worked here built more than the people who owned it," I said. He stared at the beams, then admitted he had understood my plan. He tore it because board members praised me, and the thought that I might become the resort's future made him feel replaceable. "If you failed, you would come back and I could forgive you," he said. "Then you would still need me." His confession did not heal me. It clarified him. He had not mistaken me for someone weak. He had recognized strength and tried to starve it until it depended on him. "You were supposed to come back," he whispered. "I did," I said. "Just not beneath you." He asked whether there was a path back. I said it began with apologizing to the workers and vendors he had blamed. Without using me as proof, he had changed. It offered no guaranteed reward. He nodded and left. Weeks later, Ben told me my father had visited his workshop and apologized without mentioning my name. Ben did not forgive him, but he accepted the first repayment. I felt no warmth, only a cautious loosening inside my chest. Accountability was not reconciliation. It was simply the first honest thing my father had done when there was no audience left to impress. I did not watch him walk away. Revenge had brought me to the meeting, but it was no longer the thing holding me upright. The heavier consequence was not that my father lost a resort. It was that he finally understood why his daughters no longer needed his permission to live. 1 year after the sale, Pine Glass Conservation Lodge finished its first profitable 4-season cycle. Snorch is greater than. Every former employee who wanted to remain had been offered a position. The small vendors had been paid. The restored creek passed its water quality inspection, and the education center hosted its first class of students from towns where wildfire and unstable tourism had narrowed the future. Summit's investors earned a measured return, not the fantasy promised in my family's deck, but a durable one. Sophia was still at Green Peak. She had earned one promotion and no special access to me. My mother attended therapy and stopped sending letters that treated guilt as réconciliation. My father had begun repaying 2 vendors from his retirement income, a few $100s at a time. None of that restored the family we might have been. Consequences are not cruel simply because they cannot be reversed. People later said I had destroyed my family for revenge. That version was convenient because it made one angry daughter more frightening than years of arrogance, debt, theft, and silence. I did not sabotage a healthy resort. I refused to place $90 million of other people's money beneath a collapsing lie. I did not make my father pledge the house, falsify projections, steal my design, or leave vendors unpaid. I removed the shield he believed family, obligation would always provide, and let his choices reach him. I will not pretend revenge played no part. The 2-3-year-old inside me wanted him to feel the floor disappear. But if revenge had been my only goal, I would have closed the resort, fired everyone, and sold the land in pieces. Instead, I protected the workers, paid the smallest creditors, preserved the forest, and built something the town I could keep after all our names were forgotten. Power is not proven by how completely you can ruin someone. It is proven by what you refuse to become while they face the truth. I did not destroy my family because I hated them. I refused to save them because I had learned that some bridges should be allowed to burn into ash. A bridge that only carries demands toward you and obedience away from you is not a connection. It is a leash. My father once believed $100 was enough to measure my worth. He was wrong. That money did not buy my success. It bought a bus ticket, one meal, and the bus, first few miles of distance from a life designed to make me small. Everything snorts after that was built, from work, boundaries, and the decision never to kneel for love again. So, tell me honestly in the comments, if tomorrow you held the power to decide the fate of the person who threw you out with $100, would you forgive them? Or would you let them pay the full price of their choices? I want the answer you would give when no one in your family is listening, is greater than. Thank you for supporting our storytelling and watching until the final moment. All situations in this video are fictional and created only for entertainment and reflection. We hope it reminds you that someone can hurt you deeply and still expect you to carry the relationship as if nothing happened. But with love without repair is not enough, and forgiveness without change can become another way to reopen the same wound.